So recently I was reading, as I tend to do, a online article, and the article was expressing that the EU Tax Observatory had proposed a global international 2% tax on billionaires. It would generate $250 billion annually that could be put toward humanitarian aid, welfare, and so on and so forth. On top of that, basically 2,700-ish that we know of people hold like 13 trillion in money. And so it would be almost nothing to them. It would not change their lifestyle in any way, shape, or form, but it could be life-changing money for the rest of the world. There are a couple of issues with this, though. The first issue that I really have with this is who is going to do the taxing. Is it going to be like the World Bank? Is it going to be like the UN? Who would actually be in charge of the tax? Because it would be a global tax to billionaires in any country. Billionaires can often avoid paying taxes at such a very high rate because, for instance, in the United States, they put a lot of it into investing, and investing tax rates are lower than income tax rates. So even though they're gaining money in a way that's taxed at a lower rate. Another thing that a lot of billionaires do is they just put them in, shell accounts or shell businesses and hide the money away so they don't have to pay taxes on it. This is like really common stuff. And so this 2% tax was presented as a way to mitigate some of that, because billionaires basically get away with a lot of tax evasion by finding loopholes. And so they pay way lower tax amounts than the average person, because the average person is paying such a massively higher percent of their income than a billionaire is. That's obviously problematic, and we need solutions to it. But if the wrong people are managing the money that comes in from the tax, the problem is how does that money get from the billionaire who doesn't need it, who has the ability to completely fund the entire rest of their life for their roof over their head, food in their belly, clothes on their back, health and safety provided for them and their families, and then, the majority of the world does not have that accessible to them. That's obviously an issue. But how do you get the money from the billionaire to the person who's poor? How do you get the money from the billionaire to the farmer in the Ivory Coast who is so completely destitute that he can't afford to buy his own produce that he grows on his own farm? He can't even send his kids to school because he has to use them as labor on his own farm in order to afford keeping the farm. How do we get the money from the billionaire to the person who needs it most? And proposing a 2% tax isn't necessarily a bad thing. 2% on a billionaire is not even going to phase them. Their income is so astronomically high, it's ridiculous to even not consider it. What is important to consider is, do we even have systems in place where we could put that money to where it needs to go? Our current financial systems tend to funnel all the money up. And so how do we take that money that gets taxed and actually put it where it needs to go, to the poorest people? In my personal opinion, a financial system is only as good as whoever is poorest and whoever is most oppressed or marginalized by that financial system. A financial market can only be considered free, in my opinion, if everyone is free who uses it to reach their full potential. If the poorest people are not able to reach potential and instead have limitations or restrictions placed upon them, it's not a free market, in my opinion. And right now, the systems that are in place, if we took a 2% billionaire tax, as much as that has potential to help people, it would not be that effective because the systems themselves are designed to constantly pursue growth of the top, highest, best numbers, and not necessarily to pursue the growth of the lowest, most poor, most marginalized people and their teeny tiny numbers. And until that changes, it's kind of like posturing. Even if they do actually enact a 2% tax on billionaires, how actionable is it to get that money where it needs to go?